Hello and welcome to Business Finishing School. Let your business brain finish what your entrepreneurial heart started. Our catalyzing statement is a successful entrepreneur inside of every business. Enjoy this module. Hello and welcome to module 43. Wow, 43. Man, this has been quite a journey.
We were so young 43 modules ago.
Your hair has grayed considerably.
Yeah. Is it because of the modules?
It's distinguished. Well, actually, it gives you more character, and that is the segue into our module this month. We're here to talk about character. And I believe that character is what got you to where you are right now. And I believe that as you're planning your future and thinking about your legacy, character is the thing that's going to determine whether or not you're going to fulfill that vision that you might have for your destiny. So what is character? There might be a lot of dictionary definitions. I have my own personal definition that I believe is very applicable, especially from a business finishing school perspective. And that is that character is living as an action that which you consciously value. This is really the maturity of values-based decision making, and we've really inculcated the whole concept of values, values-based decision-making, living your values, etc. Character is when you're living as an action that which you consciously value, that which you care about. If you want to have a legacy, just think about it for a moment. You are saying, I want to have something that I leave behind me that's a byproduct of the energy that I've expended during the course of my life, right? I mean, that's pretty much what legacy is. What that legacy is going to be completely representative of your character and of your character traits. Ultimately, I think that people, have the obvious character traits they look for. Not that they're trite, but that they're kind of obvious: honesty, maybe transparency, integrity, etc. And these are all worthy things. But here is what I want you to consider right now, and this is the purpose of this module and this particular exercise. If you look into the future as to who you want to be, where you want to go, what your legacy is going to be, if you were to consider what the next chapter of your life is, all these questions that we're raising during the course of all these modules, some of which we've already discussed and some of which are coming in the future, one of the things that you have to ask yourself, which is, I believe, a powerful exercise, and I've used it myself, and I use it on an ongoing basis, is I think to myself, for that next stage of my life, for that place that I'm going, what character traits would I have to adopt in order to become that person? It's a very powerful question. And we'll talk about it in the form maybe of an exercise towards the end. And there's a second kind of derivative question, which is, what character traits might I have to cease? Because you have positive ones, you have negative ones, right? What will I have to let go of? What would I have to stop doing in order to become that person? So that is the way that I like to at least frame up character, and especially as it relates to legacy.
I want to talk about it from the perspective of how unpopular the word has become. You think about our culture nowadays, and you think about what our kids aspire to become. And I remember as a child thinking about Benjamin Franklin and George Washington and very successful people that had character. And I remember I had a mentor named Mr. O'Donnell that talked a lot about character, and he would ask me questions like you just posed, Patrick. And I wonder what we need to do as business people and as parents and as leaders, not only to instill character into ourselves and operate from the perspective and the consciousness of character building, but also how do we get our kids and our staff members and our peers to think about character as well? Because sadly, we live in a culture about me, mine, now, all about instant gratification. And I definitely want to put that as a backdrop for you to think about how absolutely positively distinct you will be. You will emerge as a leader. And we want to talk about leadership in another module, but character is one of those things that without question will define your legacy more than anything else. Absolutely. So Patrick and I, when we think about the modules to present to you, we put a lot of thought into crafting a complete picture so that you don't have to go anywhere else. Everything is here. You'll have 48 modules to dip your toe into at any time. And character is one of those groundbreaking, ground-shaking, I don't know another way to say it, but if you can define your character in a way that defines your future and ultimately your legacy, it will create an incredibly strong foundation to build your future upon.
When you shift into this, you asked the question about, how do you instill character into your employees or maybe your stakeholders, vendors, all the people, in the varying relationships that you might have around you in business. I think it goes back to values again and the values-based decisions and working with people who share your values and therefore they should have similar characteristics. But really the question we have to ask, and this is, and I'd be curious as you're listening to my voice right now, and you're starting to assess this whole sphere of character. One of the things we have to do is, what are your premises about character? For example, is character something that's innate and hardwired and born, or is character something that is chosen, or is character something that is developmental over time? You just kind of develop it. Which is it? My view on it. And maybe I'll back up and say, why is that an important question? Because your premise about character is going to determine what you believe is possible as far as developing character, right? So we want to put this out. So the first thing I'd say is, I think it's a little bit of all three. I believe that you have certain innate character. You're born with a certain traits. And if any of you have children, especially have more than one child, who are in the same household, getting the same upbringing, but you see their different characters, you begin to see that there's sort of a set of character traits that you're born with. You're hardwired. Next, I've, through my life growing up, have been impacted greatly by mentors, people along the way who helped change me, who shaped my character. And that's, mothers, fathers, teachers, preachers, people that you come across. In business, especially when I was in high school, I was really enamored with, with two different businessmen who were presidents of their own companies, successful people. And I had such a desire to want to admire them, want to learn from them, want to model them in certain ways. And they took me under their wing and helped shape my character in many respects. So that was kind of developmental along the way. But ultimately, when you really mature, you get to self-reflect and then decide, who do I want to be? What character traits do I want to adopt? So I believe it's a part of all three of those things, but we're now at the maturity level where we're 4 years in, we're talking about legacy, and I'm now saying, your past is all the things we described. Now I want you to choose character traits that you can aspire to.
And character traits that you'll need to live into the future that you're choosing for yourself. If your future is to retire and, buy a log cabin somewhere and you don't have any financial needs or concerns, you're going to have different character traits that you want to build. However, if your future is all about becoming a dominant leader in your industry, you're going to have other character traits to develop. I want to talk about what the dictionary says about character and also what the dictionary says about being out of character. I also want to talk about an analogy around epigenetics, which I'll get into in a moment. Mm-hmm. But the dictionary says character is the aggregate of features and traits that form the individual or the nature of some person or thing. The moral or ethical quality is another way. Another way of describing it is qualities of honesty, courage, or the like, integrity, and lastly, reputation. It also says out of character. What is being out of character? Being out of harmony with one's personal disposition. So oftentimes we say, man, it was really out of character for her to cheat on her spouse or for him to steal or whatever because you think you know someone's character and they do something that's out of character. But to go back to the epigenetics, I believe that as humans, we're born with a certain set of DNA characteristics. But if we live an incredibly healthy lifestyle, and if we eat correctly, and if we exercise, and if we keep stress out of our lives and we get our sleep, those negative genes will not express themselves. I believe character is kind of the same way. You may be born with some negative character attributes, but through an upbringing that's got a lot of integrity, through hard work, through seeing the fruits of your labor, you'll start to develop other character traits. So I don't know if that analogy was explained right. Maybe, Patrick, you could tap on it a little bit more. But I think epigenetics related to negative genes is the same as character related to whatever your predisposed character traits might be that are negative.
I think that's absolutely true. Further, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, trying to let go of negative character traits. You and I know, for example, Rick, somebody who recognized they had a character trait that was sort of, I don't know, it was kind of hardwired, but part of their experience that they took a step back and recognized that had anger issues. Mm-hmm. And this anger issue, this anger trait, was having an adverse effect on his employees, on his love relationships, on his friends. That he would kind of be short-circuited and whatever, but made a conscious decision to change his character and become somebody who doesn't hot react in certain situations, et cetera, and was able to do that. So that's an example of how you're saying, wow, quite frankly, this guy was extremely successful in life in many respects, but still looked to, he was seeking to grow. And that's what we're talking about here, is that you can look at character traits now that could be limiting you from, having the full experience you want to have. And we contextualize this to business to a degree. And that's why I'm saying, what character traits could change? Like, for example, what if you had more discipline around, your organization before meetings, for example? You might say, I go in and I run a pretty good meeting, but my company is at X. If I want my company to go Y, then I might show up different at the meetings. I might be more prepared. Or it might be, I'll give you an example of what I'm working on. So I'm a guy who's got pretty good, compared to most people, I got really good energy levels. I get up early, I put in long days, I hold my energy good throughout those days. And I feel like I manage time. I've mastered the management of time through the way that I structure my days in a pretty significant way. And quite frankly, that's because I followed the rules and the modules that we've been teaching you all along. Management by objective, rhythm and ritual to amplify time and success. All those things have had a massive impact on me that I've learned from you, Rick. So I feel like, wow, and I've grown to a certain level. But now I'm looking at my next level, which is substantially past anything I've ever done before. And I've said to myself, what character traits would I have to adopt to be the person that can make that happen? And the answer, one of them that I came up with, was I'm going to have to be a better energy manager. I feel like my time management skills could get me there. But my energy management is going to have to get better. Not that it's bad, but it's going to have to get better. So that literally, I would say a characteristic I have is that I'm a master energy manager, and there's different forms of energy. There's mental energy, there's spiritual energy, there's physical energy, and maybe we'll do a separate module on that. But the bottom line is that winning requires energy. Being on that level of the game requires really big energy, and in order for me to go to the level that I envision me going to, I believe I'm going to have to reorganize my approach towards energy management to get me there. And that's just one example, a personal example of something I'd say, what's it going to take for me to be that person? What's it going to take for me to win on that level? Now, sometimes if you're sitting there saying, I'm not sure, I could tell you an experience I had recently that would help you find it. I was at an event, I was backstage at an event, a big event a friend of mine put on, and some really accomplished people were back there, and I was interacting, rubbing shoulders, etc. Suddenly a guy walks in the room. I'm not going to mention names, but he's flanked by two former Navy SEALs that are his security team. He came in on his private jet. He's a billionaire and he's fairly well known. And when he enters the room, there's a presence. You feel it. There's a posture. There's a look. There's an efficiency about just the way that he handles everything. And I looked and I said, "Wow, I want to study what I'm seeing right now because it's making an impression. What are the character traits that he's exhibiting right now that I would want to adopt so that I can get to that level of the game?" I believe that if you look at people that are where you want to be and people that are admirable, and maybe even people that you might not like so much, you can still pick out one or two positive traits about them that you want to aspire to. And there's no rules around this. It could be anywhere from a high level driver to a Gandhi who would seem very zen and chill, or anything in between. You can look at, you might read, for example, Steve Jobs' book, like I did, and what are you going to find there? There are some really negative character traits that were holding Jobs back from what his life could have been, quite frankly. He was successful in spite of these negative traits. But there are also some other traits about him that gave him the greatness and gave Apple the greatness that it had. So can you start to separate? Say, I don't want to be like Steve Jobs, the rabid dog, trying to basically lay it into people. But I do want to be Steve Jobs, the creative force of nature that wants to change the world. So what are the character traits you want to adopt?
Now that we're being a little bit revealing, and Patrick and I work together all the time. We've been in an accountability group for 5.5 years plus. And what we bring to you is a deep well of knowledge, not only from our personal experiences separate from each other, but also working together so closely for 5.5 years. He's watched me grow, I've watched him grow. And one of the things that I've noticed about myself when he challenged me to look at it, he says, look, I see a future for you that is even bigger than even you see, but there are things holding you back. And I want to know, what character traits do you need to possess to be the leader that you can become? And so I really looked hard at myself. And the thing that I realized was I'm extremely over the top judgmental. I'm judgmental of people and things. And what I realized is that if I'm going to be where I need to get, I need to change and develop a character trait. And that character trait is acceptance of people and things. I had a friend, Phil Gable, who died a few years ago. And on his deathbed, he said, one thing I want to teach you, Sapio, is stop fighting change. He said, change is an inevitable part of life. You have to learn to accept it. And so that fighting of change is a judgmental behavior that I have. I judge people, I judge things, and there's such a thing as judgment that's positive. For example, when I'm looking at investments to make, what sectors do I want to invest in? But that's one way that you can use judgment in a positive way. Another thing, when you're judging potential employees or existing employees, there's ways to do that lovingly, where you make a judgment call, you keep it to yourself. So a form of judgment that I want to completely eliminate from my life is talking about people behind their back. That is so destructive. Recounting stories, he said, she said, none of that matters. That's the past. So one of the character traits that I want to develop as I move into the next 50 years of my life is acceptance. And as part of acceptance is non-judgment. I think for me, and probably for many of you listening, you're saying, holy cow, that's something I could do as well. Another thing around acceptance is self-acceptance, learning to love yourself. Once you love yourself the way you are, then and only then can you truly look at yourself in an unbiased way and figure out, what do I need to do to grow? So the baseline is self-acceptance. And I've learned for me that, I was telling Patrick while we were preparing for this, a quote that I recently heard is, true success is when you reach a point in your life that there is no one on the planet that you would trade places with. And I remember as a youngster, I was like, oh man, I wish I was, pick a person, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, you name it. But I could finally say with 100% confidence, there is no one that I would trade places with. I love every aspect of my life. I even love the negative things because the negative things teach me about how to be the next time I encounter that situation. So, one of the areas of my life is judgment. Let me throw it back to you, Pat. Is there another character trait that you want to develop as you think about a bigger future?
Yeah, and this one's going to sound a little bit, how can I put it, ethereal, kind of vibey. But to me, I know exactly what I mean by it, so that's why it can work. I think you've all, if you're listening, you've all been in the zone at points in time where you feel fully engaged, fully empowered. You're just vibrating at a frequency that is an aura of confidence and success. So and with certain things that have unfolded for me lately, as I've been moving toward the next chapter of my life and career after selling my businesses a couple of years ago, I've started to experience that I'm finding my place, my groove, and I'm having more and more episodes of feeling this aura of abundance and success and power. So one of and I'll go back to the example I gave earlier, looking at the person who enters the room and there's an aura there. There's just a presence there. So a habit I want to adopt is maintaining that, keeping that, which I believe can be a volitional act of discipline that is a character trait. This is a person that exudes confidence, that exudes abundance, that exudes success. I believe that is completely aligned as a character trait for the person that I'm looking to be, in my near future, what I'm striving for right now. So that one's a little bit more ethereal, but it's on my list.
As I think more, Patrick, about the exercise that you pose to our accountability group and which I'm posing to our listeners about what character traits that you think or I think I should develop, I don't know how this fits as a character trait, but I want to be known as someone that's fully present, experiencing every moment of my life. And I love the Guy Finley quote. I couldn't have even accepted this quote 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Here's the quote. It says, "Only good things happen to those to whom good is all things." And how I interpret that quote is everything that happens in our life has a purpose. If you want to take it to the extreme, we've all read Man's Search for Meaning, or many of us have read Man's Search for Meaning, written by Viktor Frankl. And in the book, he describes being in a Nazi prison camp, being tortured. And no matter how bad it got, he got to a point in his life that he realized that every moment is special. He's going to be present to the beauty that is life. He even began feeling compassion for the guards that were torturing him. Imagine that. Imagine no matter how bad you think your life is, that you're going to be fully present and you're going to appreciate that moment, because at some point in the future, you're going to look back on that moment and you're going to realize that moment made me a better person. That's appreciating everything that happens to you. There was a point where there was a little flower that was in his meager bowl of soup, and he was looking at the beauty of this tiny little flower that was probably a weed that somehow ended up in his bowl of soup. But he was appreciating the beauty of nature in that moment. And we all have the opportunity to choose greatness and beauty and presence at every moment of our life. And unfortunately, as a society gets more and more wealthy, where even the poorest of the poor have electronic devices and TVs and cars and everything, I think at a certain point we stop appreciating, we stop being present. So I would like to be known as someone that loves every moment of his life, that people go, there's a special quality about that person. They're present, they're with me, they're not distracted, they're fully engaged in their life. So that's the second one that I wanted to share with you.
Just to follow up on that, I think we've all been in the presence of that person that where you feel like they make you feel like you're the only person in the world at that moment in time. You've seen, and it's interesting that you choose that characteristic that you want to strive to develop that characteristic trait or that character trait. Where you have, I've been at the meetings, or you're sitting with somebody and they're sitting there, they're on their their smartphone and they're texting back and forth, and then they're kind of distracted, looking around. And then I've been there with the person who literally, it seems like you're the only person in the world right now with them, and it's quite an experience. It's a powerful experience, especially when the person is there bringing something to the table. So I think that that's an extraordinary character trait to strive for. So with all this, I think we turn the tables now to you who are listening. So the exercise coming off of this particular module is pretty simple and straightforward, but it's not necessarily easy. As a matter of fact, if you're doing it right, it should be kind of difficult. And the exercise is pick between 3 and 5 new character traits that you need to adopt in order to become the person that you want to become. They could be any number of things. It's going to be different. It should be different for everybody. If you're a procrastinator, you're going to have to, be somebody who becomes much more proactive, that you're going to give up procrastination. That's the negative side, or you're going to move towards being somebody who gets it done right now. So it could be any number of things. And mind you, most character traits are a matter of scale. It's not a matter that's all or nothing, like procrastination, for example. It's not like you're either a total procrastinator or you're a never procrastinator. It's a matter of degree in that. It's not a matter like for Rick was just talking about that you're totally present or you're zero present. It's a matter of increasing that or turning that up more. So you can look at improving certain character traits that you have now that you want to work on. You could look at adopting something brand new that's not just a part of your general character right now. And you can also consider as a part of this what you need to let go of or what you need to stop doing. But what I do know is that if you were, as you're considering your year 4 now, you're considering your legacy, which is, what do you want your energy to leave behind you and what impact you want to have in the world. You're considering what your future is going to be, and now the decision, and I believe, quite frankly, this is everything. If you can get clear on these things and act upon them, it makes it a certainty that you'll achieve what it is you're after. If you can identify the key character traits, 3 to 5, that you need to adopt in order to make that happen, and you start living those character traits, then your future is going to manifest the way that you want it to.
One of the things you could also do for inspiration is Benjamin Franklin, when he was a young man, he picked 13 character traits that he wanted to learn and adopt. And those 13 are included in the implementation guide. But what he did is he worked on only one at a time. He journaled about it, he thought about it, he tried to master it. And once he felt like he mastered it, he went to the second one. And he went through all 13 because he felt that these character traits were the ones that he needed in order to become the man that he wanted to become. So what we're asking you to do is something that Patrick and I are both doing ourselves, and it's something that Benjamin Franklin, one of the greatest legacies of any human being who's ever lived, also did. And that is to define those attributes, those characteristics, those character traits that you'll need on your journey to greatness. And with that, we will wrap up this module. Thanks for listening.
Let your business brain finish what your entrepreneurial heart started.